Hey, I'm Scott Wood. Sometimes I host the interview show, and today I'm talking to, well, let him introduce himself.
What's going on? It's Tyrow James.
Rat times, bullet your bring peace loud. Public enemy, rolling with the weird crowd.
The tradition continues.
Yes.
This is the third, I think, year in a row that we've had an interview when I've released an LP, a new LP. So I've forced Scott to come down here against his will to come do an interview with me.
So we're going to talk about Apocalypse Noir. What
Right.
is that, Tyrow?
Apocalypse Noir is the new album that I put out. This one is something completely different than what I've done before. You know, instead of talking and rapping about, you know, junkies and people puking and punker chicks and, you know, the stuff that people, you know me for, I decided to stay up extra late at night, watch a lot more black and white movies, and really dive into the film noir genre of almost a forgotten genre, if you will, in Hollywood movies these days.
So let me tell you about my writing and those tricky tactics. I simply chill with chicks, watching all the movie classics. Clark Gable, I'm a lady killer Vandals track. I'm just a rapping punk waiting for the world to crack. I'd fit right into
What if I took situations in a noir movie and applied them to people I know in my real life with a bit of Satan and a, you know, evil twist to it to make it a little more Tyrow-ish.
You were attracted to noir films. It inspired your work. So I'd love you to talk a bit about what's going on in your life that made noir movies resonate so strongly with you.
It's almost like ex-girlfriends, bad relationships. I've talked about that all over my old albums.
So for people who don't know, your older music has a lot of songs about women that you've dated who are perhaps not the best type of girl to date.
I have written a lot of songs and had a lot of strange relationships that with strange characters for sure. And
some very interesting stories, but let's bring it to noir.
Right.
Let's bring it to noir and the record.
Well, I always thought it was cool that a dangerous and attractive, seductive woman, you know, can prey on a broken man who's kind of lost everything, and he falls for her, thinking at least she's in love with him, but you know, she could be out for something else.
So noir films are often thought of as like old-timey black and white movies. Everybody's dressed in fedoras, the chicks are in like flapper gear, but you live in the year 2014, so how do you make noir stuff new?
Well, you know, that was kind of the whole challenge of the album, was to make it modernized to where I wasn't being too gimmicky, where you can be like, oh, he's making a noir album, right? You know, in every video he's got a fedora on. I had to take those storylines and find them in my life. You're up till 4 o'clock in the morning, you're drinking hard liquor, you know, you're reflecting on relationships past, and you know, things like that create a certain mood.
One of the most compelling things about Tyrow James' music is those songs and those stories where you talked about the bad relationships you've been through, because you acknowledge like the darkest stuff you don't hear in a lot of hip-hop tracks, but you also at the same time acknowledge the like intense connection, which I think is awesome.
I feel that sometimes things can look better, a little more grungier.
I would love you to talk about one track that was difficult for you to write on the record, because you're not used to writing such short songs.
It's called Prone to Unusual Situations with my good friend Dream Girl. It was the very first track that I wrote to the album, and the beat that I had 2 verses on it. And I remember I was writing the song, and I'm like, you know, I just couldn't find the words, and I remember just going back to like high school English 12 stuff when they would say, just summarize everything in one sentence, you know? So I thought, what if it summarized everything into one verse that needs to be said? So that's kind of what I did, and it was like, it was difficult to think, okay, that's it. But I remember when I finished the chorus and the last line, I stand back and I said, okay, that's it.
These days have passed her swiftly, comfort zone and sleepless nights. I traffic bad advice, buy it while I've slashed the price. The sights of neon lights reminds me there's no home but here, amongst the soulless creeps demanding for my smokes and beer. Redundancy, it's something that's defined her years.
So in the record Apocalypse Noir, you sample a lot of movie lines.
Yes.
So do you want to talk about finding those lines and maybe one specifically that you love and why?
I used the movie from 1955, Kiss Me Deadly, a lot on there. The Kiss Me Deadly lines were really good. I really liked also the ones that I used from In a Lonely Place with my boy Humphrey Bogart and my girl Gloria Graham. There's a quote from the movie The Chase.
And The Chase is about what?
The Chase is about a limo driver who falls in love with his rich boss's wife. And the wife gives him maybe she's into him, but he's not sure if he is. So he wants to run away with her because he thinks she's in an abusive relationship. Turns out that it's all a big misunderstanding kind of type deal. But I'll never forget the quote that I used of it kind of summed up the situation a man like that could be in when the girl says, "Have you ever been afraid, really afraid?" And then she looks at him and he's like, "What do you want me to do?"
Your first record is one that I've heard a lot for the first time that I interviewed you, The Brass Knuckles Effect.
Right.
That guy was a goofy, happy-go-lucky guy who rapped about some sort of dark stuff.
Yeah.
Now, in the latest record, you're a little bit different. You would say maybe grown up. I don't know if that's the word I'd use, but I'd love you to talk about what happened to that goofy, lovable guy.
That goofy, lovable guy was a pretty pissed off guy who just decided to show his anger through making it funny. You know, look at me, I'm in a shitty situation. Let's laugh at it. I think it just ran its course, that material. It got to a point where I got bored, and then I just decided, you know what, it's time to really like legitimize myself here. You know, we've done the snotty punk stuff. I've done like the trashing subcultures thing. Let's try and do something a little more creative, something that can challenge me a little more. I felt it was necessary in order to go to further evolve this. I felt if I just kept doing what I was doing, I would just kind of coast.
Classified is a Canadian rapper.
Right.
He has said that he hated the first 4 records that he put out and that he shouldn't have put them out. I'm not trying to get you to say that you don't like your music, but what do you feel
I said it for years.
What do you feel about growth in hip hop?
Well, I hated my first record. I still kind of do. Not Brass Knuckles Effect, but the one before that. I can't really say that I really look back at my stuff and say I don't like and I regret putting that out, because the Brass Knuckles Effect second album there was a great time in my life for a lot of reasons. It was a really bad time in my life for a lot of reasons. But it was an excellent time for music for me. I have to keep topping myself every time with something different. It can't be the same crap every time. It has to be a new concept, and it has to be something that I think is pretty cool, and that someone else could think is cool too. I can't be like, yeah, I'm gonna make that same record again and you're gonna buy it, because to me that's kind of selling yourself out. You know it already works.
Let's talk about a little bit of a controversial topic. So
Sure.
I want you to talk about paying to play versus DIY. Now first, for people who don't know what those things are, you're gonna have to explain them.
A promoter who's got a show is selling opening slots. And in turning with selling opening slots, you must sell the tickets for the event. So it's almost like, you know, some people may disagree, but it's kind of like a pyramid scheme. DIY is when you just do it yourself, go to the phone a bar, email a booker or whatever, email whoever, the manager, and say, this is so-and-so, I like to book a show, or, you know, first off, do you do shows if you don't know? And then you get a show and you don't have to pay anything unless you're paying sound men and stuff out of your pocket. But for the most part, you would charge cover and try and make your money back. So in a sense, it cuts that promoter middleman out.
So how common is paying to play?
It's actually really common. But in the rap scene, they'll have a guy with like 15 openers, and they'll at like 6 p.m. till like to midnight. There is no wrong way to do a show. As long as the show happens and the people are happy, whatever. There's better ways to spend $300, especially if you're getting a 7 o'clock opening start. You can take that money you spent and maybe get a video, or maybe get like your CD pressed up, or maybe some better mastering, and really expand your fan base and expand your brand. It's more important as an independent up-and-coming artist to build your own fan base, so one day people are opening for you and pushing tickets for you maybe, right? Or paying top dollar to come see you. I think that's more beneficial in the long run than just jumping on some show that some guy is kind of famous playing.
When you talk to big name rappers, they will flat out tell you that when they make a record, they'll be like, I gotta make 4 songs for the women, 2 party bangers, and then a couple ones for my bros.
Right. You know, I've always thought if I could do something that was gonna be mainstream and sell, as long as I made it my way or my brand and still did it in a way where it could sell, I'm totally open to the challenge of it.
I guess the dance you're doing as somebody who's putting music out there is that you have to give the people what they want somewhat, but you also have to satisfy yourself. So I'd love you to talk about how you do that dance in the studio while you're writing.
I really pander to myself when I write something. I'm like, do I think it's cool? Yeah, I think it's cool. Well, someone else might not think it's cool. They might not like it, but I like it, so let's do it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I have to cater to myself first, and then usually people kind of pick up on it and they're like, yeah, it's not too bad. But I'm always my biggest fan, I gotta say. So I am kind of like me first, and then the fans. Just kidding. The fans are always first.
So when you're making songs that are catering to yourself and not necessarily the fans, how do you rein in the excess? Because every artist, if you listen to any artist over their career, they're going to make that album that everyone pretty much agrees is a wank. So how do you stop yourself from doing that too much?
Catchy choruses. I can do any song about like something that I, again, pandering to myself, but if I can throw in a catchy chorus, the song's alright. Because even if you might not like some of the lyrics, damn, that chorus was catchy, and it's in my head.
Last question. If there was one hip-hop cliche you could destroy, what cliche would that be and why?
You know when people keep those stupid stickers in their hats? What was with that?
What is that about? I always see those guys. Even today I saw one, I think, on the way here. What is with those gold stickers?
I think it's supposed to mean like you just bought it or something, but when it gets really old, it gets really, you see like the line around of dirt. That's probably one like hip-hop cliche fashion that just needs to go.
That was a good one. What hip-hop cliche are you the most guilty of?
Being white and think I can rap. That's the worst one.
All right, I'm Scott Woods. Sometimes I do the interview show, and this guy, his name's Tyrow James. And what does he do?
I'm just some crazy guy from out there in Cloverdale that does some hip hop with a little bit of punk attitude to it, and not going away anytime soon.
And his record is called
Apocalypse Noir.